Welcome back to yet another live broadcast on your favorite football updates channel. It's a pleasure to be here with you on this beautiful Wednesday morning, the 28th of January 2026. It's quite a calm, sort of cloudish morning down here in Kampala, Uganda, where it's about 45 minutes past the hour of 9 a.m. That we do come to you live. I had promised to come a little late than the usual 9 a.m. Reason being, I wanted us to have the inclusion of our friends over there in Europe that may be still sleeping by the time of our broadcast, to be able to chip in because I will be doing, excuse me, because this morning we'll be doing the extension or the extent, we'll be continuing with our coverage of the UEFA Champions League. Last night, we were at it. We did look at, we did preview some games. So we want to continue with that conversation this beautiful morning. So do, bear with me, indulge with me. Indulge me as we go through that. Of course, the conversation started yesterday morning when we looked at all the fixtures and stuff and some of our expectations really. So yeah, we are back at it this beautiful morning. I hope you all had a wonderful night. For those of you that were part of last night's discussion, I can't say thank you enough because you made it worthwhile. People like Leo, people like Jean, people like Pedri, people like Presin Kosi, people like Muhammad, I think from Pakistan, and every single one of you that made Amlen, and single one of you that did make it a point to be with us last night for our conversation. For those of you that join us from Uganda, Mwasuzemtia. For those of you that are joining us from German, Guten Tag. For those of you that are joining us from USA, Britain, Scotland, we say good morning. Unfortunately, I cannot say, and those who join us from Kenya, Tanzania, I say to you, habari, on this beautiful morning. So yeah, we'll continue with that conversation on the UEFA Champions League. Last night, we looked at games like Napoli versus Chelsea. We looked at PSG versus Newcastle. We looked at Barcelona versus Copenhagen. We looked at Borussia Dortmund against Inter Milan. Manchester City versus Galatasaray. We also looked at the game between Benfica and Real Madrid. So I will be continuing with part of that conversation because there's so many fixtures to come our way. 36 teams involved. That means you have at least 18 games to be played on March the 8th. For those of you that are just joining us, kindly like the broadcast, but also consider subscribing to the channel if it's your first time here. To today, what should be our poll question? I feel I want to put out one, but it should be for perhaps one of those games. Because one of the most difficult games is PSG, Newcastle, Dortmund, Inter, and then Chelsea, Napoli. Those are some of the most difficult games for us on today. So if I leave it very open, you guys will struggle with it because there's so many teams involved here. But let's try and keep it simple. Let's choose just one game between maybe PSG and Newcastle. Who do you think will win that fixture today? Will be our poll question. PSG versus Newcastle. Who will win? Who will win? You say PSG, say Newcastle, and then the other option is a draw. There's no abstaining. So you're either part of it or out of it. There's no going Switzerland. There's no going the Switzerland way. So that's our poll this morning. Please endeavor to engage. Fatuma, Epilau Fatuma says, "Hey, speak louder." Oh, okay. Perhaps. All right. Thanks for that. I'll adjust my voice. But where are you joining us from, Fatuma? Good morning. It's a pleasure to have you on the broadcast. Kindly like the broadcast, but also consider subscribing to the channel. Like I said, it's a sports channel, it's a football channel. Last night we did discuss the UEFA Champions League. Today we are here to continue with that conversation. I've told you some of the games we looked at last night. For those of you that are interested in catching that conversation, just go over to the channel. Under the live section, you'll be able to see the UEFA Champions League preview, in which we looked at games like Napoli, Chelsea, Barcelona game, PSG game, Dortmund game, Man City, Real Madrid. So this morning we'll be looking at games like Liverpool are in action against Karabakh. We'll look at games like Monaco versus Juventus. We'll look at Arsenal against Kairati Almaty and any other. That Bayern Munich are in action against PSV. Tottenham Hotspur play away to Eintracht Frankfurt. Pafos will be up against Slavia Praha. Olympic Marseille play away to Braga. So those are some of the fixtures. Bilbao do take on Sporting CP, who won AFCON. This is Treasure Matovu. It was Senegal who won the Africa Cup of Nations with Pape Gueye scoring the only goal in that final after Brahim Diaz missed his penalty before extra time. So Pape Gueye's goal came in the 94th minute. That is in extra time. To win it all for Senegal as they won the second AFCON title, in history. So that's who won AFCON. Okay, so we'll kick off with the game between Liverpool and Karabakh. First of all, Karabakh has been one of those teams that has sort of posed to be a challenge for some opponents, and that's why they have 3 wins already. They have 1 draw and 3 losses with 10 points. Now, a lot of people, myself included, I thought, sometimes in football you get an underdog rising to the occasion and sort of putting up decent results. And Karabakh has been one of those teams. Not that I did expect them to be that team, but I think right from the onset, from match day 1, they showed intent. Because despite going 2 goals down against Benfica, they managed to crawl their way back up to win that game by 3-2, which subsequently culminated into the sacking of Bruno Lage at Benfica. And then, of course, we know that Fenerbahce had part ways with Jose Mourinho, and it made the perfect story. Jose Mourinho now is in charge of Benfica, who have struggled through this campaign, losing to Karabakh, losing to teams like Newcastle, among others, during the course of the competition. So Liverpool do take on a team that is a bit of an unknown quantity in the broader context of European football, in my opinion. Because usually our focus is well within the top 5 leagues, and even I, for one, do sort of boil it down to a fewer teams, because you can only follow so much in terms of being critical of every team and having a full insight of those respective teams. Liverpool, as we thought, they had bounced back with that victory against Olympic Marseille on match day 7. They looked sharp. They scored 3 goals, and Olympic Marseille were unable to respond. It wasn't the best day in office for players like Mason Greenwood. They've since signed Quinton Timber and Ethan Nwaneri. I do not think those ones will be able to make the matchday squad. But yeah, Liverpool came out of the weekend with a defeat, losing to AFC Bournemouth by 3-2 in the aftermath of beating up against Olympic Marseille by 3-0. Now, that's where football gets interesting. That's where football becomes very unpredictable, because by measure of standards, quality of squad, size of team, stature, pedigree, history, Olympic Marseille is far a bigger team than Bournemouth are. And yet, on there you have Bournemouth beating Liverpool. Really, Liverpool beat Olympique Marseille. So you can never really tell who is going to beat who. We can only predict that, yeah, this one is stronger and possibly they will win, but it's not always a given. So Liverpool going into against the Carabao game, first of all, they're at home at Anfield. That's what gives you the encouragement. Two, Liverpool are sort of often known to be a very good team when it comes to UEFA Champions League. Yes, last season there's that cliche that they got knocked out at the round of 16, but like I keep saying, they got knocked out by the team that eventually turned out to be the champion. So at the end of the day, it sort of made it makes sense or worthwhile. Sino Bueno says, how are you? The yellow dark here. Sino, good to have you back. The yellow dark. It's been what? Ages since I last seen you on the channel. But it's always a pleasure to see you around. Do as the usual honors of liking the broadcast. But I hope you've been doing well. I hope you're okay. So Liverpool with all their quality, Ryan Gravenberch, McAllister, Soboslai, Mohamed Salah, Franvich, Ugo Ekitike, who by the way was a miss over the weekend through injury, Jeremy Frimpong, Virgil van Dijk, Ibrahim Konate, Joe Gomez, Milos Kakes, Wataru Endu, Alson Ramsey-Baker, Georgi Mamadashvili. Now, of course, Arne Slot will field his core team because the best team at his disposal, because unfortunately for him this season, he does not have the luxury of trying to field a weak team. Because why? Because of their inconsistent results. If you're not winning many enough, that means every game is crucial. Why? Because you want a win that perhaps propels you to get some bit of momentum in the next round of fixtures. And for Liverpool, they've not covered themselves in any form of glory whatsoever in recent times, because they had, I think about 4 consecutive draws in the Premier League before losing to AFC Bournemouth. So things have not been as simple or as easy for Arne Slot as one would hope. And yet, over the weekend, they have a very tough fixture on Saturday against Newcastle. So really, he will know that this is the opportunity to get back to winning ways when they take on Karabakh. Like I said, Karabakh will be making the trip to Anfield. We know Anfield can be very unforgiving on a UEFA Champions League night. It's not to say that you cannot go to Anfield and get a result. Hell, PSG went there last season and got a result, but that's PSG and not Karabakh. So Kevin Medina, expect players like Matthias Silva, players like Leandro Andrade, players like Johnny Montelio, to be in that Marco Jankovic, to be in that Karabakh team. So very interesting stuff. Of course, these two sides have not met before, so they do not have history of meeting before. But I do expect Liverpool to win that game by 3-1. That's my prediction for Liverpool versus Karabakh. So I'll leave that at that. Then Juventus versus Monaco. Juventus this season have been not different from the Juventus of the season prior. They seem to scramble their way through some results or some games. Currently, they are 15th on the UEFA Champions League log. They know that they need a win, and even though they win, it's not a guarantee that they finish within the top 8. But yeah, they take on an AC Monaco side who got obliterated by Real Madrid in their last Champions League outing when they got smashed by 6-1 in that fixture. So unfortunately for Monaco, they need this win, perhaps even more than Juventus need it. Why? Because Monaco are 21st on that league standing, and he will know for a fact that should he squander that opportunity, should he fail to get a point, there's a whole host of teams, right from 25th place teams up to until Ajax, who maybe for Ajax, Union Saint-Gilloise, the goal deficits are too big perhaps to catch up. But until the 30th team, that is Paphos, if they win their game, on the final day, then possibly they and you have you Monaco losing to Juventus, then possibly you could stand the risk of being knocked out in the UEFA Champions League at this group stage, at this league format phase. When I say group stage, I remember, guys, teams are grouped in 4 pools of 9 teams each. It's those 9 teams that get to play each other at least once during this league phase. You either play an opponent at home or away from home, but it's not either or. It's not a home and away, as you know, in the new format. So Juventus have struggled for results, but they do come out of the weekend very strong following that 3-0 victory against Napoli in the Italian Serie A. So it's a bit of an encouragement for them. But so far in this season in the UEFA Champions League, it's not that they've lost so many games, but they've drawn so many games. I mean, they've won 3, drawn 3, and lost 1. So their last, again, Champions League outing was a 2-0 victory against Benfica. Luciano Spalletti trying to get things in order. We know he replaced Igor Tudor when he got shown the exit. So very, very interesting game. Monaco has players like, players like Ansu Fati. I've been reading reports, unfortunately, that they are pondering parting ways with Paul Pogba. I do not know what's gone wrong for the French international, who thought that Monaco giving him the opportunity was his window through perhaps regaining form and possibly breaking through the French national team ahead of the FIFA World Cup 2026. Son of Soweto says, hello, my young brother from another mother, the future president of Uganda, the smart one, the articulate one. Unfortunately, about the future president of Uganda, I'm not sure I enjoy politics to that extent, but thank you so much for the kind words there. So yeah, Monaco have sort of struggled on this one. Dennis Zakaria in that midfield, Lamine Camara, there's another player. I'm trying to find that name. But yeah, Paul Pogba has struggled with injuries once again. He's been out with a knee injury. Takumi Minamino, you remember this one at Liverpool? He sort of had his struggles, but he's on a given day one of the reliable players. Eric Dyer, you remember they signed him as a free agent when he part ways with Bayern Munich in the summer, has been out through with the hamstring injury. Mohamed Salisu, yes, there has been out through an anterior cruciate ligament injury. You say Paul Pogba should play in Africa, he can come to South Africa. I mean, if the goal is to play football, then yeah, I can't object to that. What team do you think he should be joining in South Africa? Mamelodi Sundowns, Kaizer Chiefs, Orlando Pirates? Because those are some of the giants of South African football there. So that you can play in the Soweto Derby. Do not look down on yourself as president. I trust your capacity to lead. I've never even been an LC1 chairman. Of course, Sundowns. All right. It's all good there. But anyways, so he's sort of struggled again with injuries. Injuries have been a very big issue for the later part of his career, but players like Jonathan David, Kenan Yildiz, Francesco Consecao, Crepin Thuram, Manuel Locatelli, Winston McKennie. I think Winston McKennie has, by the way, popped up with a number of goals this season for Juventus. And then, of course, Andrea Cambiaso, Lloyd Kelly, Bremer, Kalulu in that defense, then Michel Di Gregorio. Now, of course, you know that Italian teams are fussy themselves with playing with the back three, so expect that not to change. While Alexander Golvin, Ansu Fati, Florian Balgan are very, very good players, I don't know. I do not trust enough that they will get past Juventus, so much so to inflict the kind of defeat that you'd wish them to inflict. So I'm going to go for a 1-all draw in that one. Monaco 1, Juventus 1. That's my prediction for that particular game. Then quickly, the other game that we should be looking at is a game between oh my God, I knew. Anyway, okay. Bayern Munich versus PSV Eindhoven. Now, Bayern Munich second on the standings with 18 points. All they need is at least a draw to guarantee a second place finish. Two, all they need is a win and then pray that Arsenal lose to possibly finish above Arsenal, who are at the summit of the standings. Remember, Arsenal yet to lose a game. Bayern Munich have only lost one game, and their lost game against Arsenal themselves. Really, so it's been the kind of for votes. Two of you have said Newcastle will win. Two have said that PSG will win. Okay. So Bayern Munich, the highest goal scoring team in European football at the moment. Very, very brilliant side. Vincent Kompany recently extended his contract. He's been quite a good manager for Bayern Munich. They were attempting to go an entire season unbeaten in the German Bundesliga, but over the weekend, Augsburg, I think, stopped that when they beat them by 2-1. So yeah, they will need to sort of pick themselves up, dust off their shoes, or try to forget the weekend results and go and beat up against PSV. There. It's not always an easy game, never an easy game, never an easy trip. Going away to Peter Boaz's side, that's our PSV. We know that this season they've beaten up against big teams like Liverpool, who they beat by 4-1. Bayern Munich, how would they set up? Manuel Neuer could be absent in this one, or perhaps rested. So Jonas Ubik, expect to see players like Alexander Pavlovich in that midfield, players like Joshua Kimmich. Mwesugwa Joshua says PSV will lose. Leonard Karl, he's been quite the revelation. Sort of reminds me of how, Jamal Musiala broke through. Unfortunately for Jamal Musiala, injuries have become a thorn in the foot for him. Luis Diaz, what a signing is proven to be for this Bayern Munich side. The icing on the cake of the right decision that they took to sign Michael Olise a season earlier. Harry Kane has been banging in the goals. I understand that contract negotiations have started between Harry Kane's camp and Bayern Munich over the possibility of extending his contract for another 2 or 3 years. That's until June 2027, with the possibility, until June 2027, with the possibility of a further year of 2028. So really, we'll have to wait and see. Maybe even 29. We'll have to wait and see what comes out of that. Jonathan Tah and Dayot Upamecano had a very, very brilliant game when they beat up against PSG by 2-1 earlier on in the season. That game in which they had to play with 10 men for the second half, following the sending off of Luis Diaz for his dangerous tackle on Achraf Hakimi, Tom Bishop. So yeah, expect to see some of those players. On the side of PSV, Ivan Perisic, Ismail Sarabia, some of the Joey Verman, some of the players that you expect to see, Dennis Mann. Now, as good as PSV can be or are, and it's a very difficult place to go and win a game of football. Really, I remember Arsenal going there and winning, was it 7-1? At the round of 16 last season. I expect Bayern Munich to bounce back from their weekend slip up against Augsburg to win this game by 3-1. So I'm going Bayern Munich to win 3-1 for that fixture. For those of you that care to know what the prediction is. Then the other game that I want us to look at is Arsenal versus Kairat Almaty. Now one will beg the question, why are you even looking at Arsenal if they've already qualified for the knockout stages. They have confirmed their place in the round of 16 and with 7 wins out of 7 following their 3-1 victory over Inter Milan. Well, they are the ones at the summit of the UEFA Champions League table, so they are worth every minute that we may dedicate to discussing their fixture against the bottom side. So it's top versus bottom when Arsenal entertain Kairat Almaty later on today at the Emirates Stadium, a ground that we saw them sink through last weekend when they lost to Manchester United by 3-2. So equally, Arsenal, one, are going to be desperate, eager, anxious to bounce back from that defeat. I've already said this season that every time Arsenal lose a game, the big question is always on the next game, because the last thing you want is to be a title contender in any competition and then lose 2 consecutive games, because then that puts a dent on your belief, on your self-esteem. Usually, if it's one defeat, it's easy for us to say, yeah, it's a one-off. Things happen. You cannot win every game, and you move past it. But it's in the next game that you show intent. And Arsenal couldn't have asked for an easier opponent, because again, not that the fixture is virtually easy, but you're playing against the bottom side. You're the best team so far in the UEFA Champions League, so there should be no excuses as to why you do not win that game. 2, have Arsenal suffered some bit of fatigue? I have a feeling they've done so, because prior to the Man United game, they had played 4 games away from home in 4 different competitions. They played Inter Milan in the UEFA Champions League away from home. They played Portsmouth away from home in the FA Cup. They played Chelsea away from home in the EFL Cup semi-finals. And then they had played Nottingham Forest away from home in the Premier League. So really, it had been a bit of a difficult run. And in those 4 games, they won 2, they drew 1, and lost they won 2, that's against Portsmouth and against Chelsea. Actually, they won 3. Against Inter, against Chelsea, and against Portsmouth. And then they draw away to Nottingham Forest. So they have been impressive. So the snafu, or the bad about the United game was how they crumbled. I believe this one will be an easy win for Arsenal, as for Arsenal's second 11. Exactly. We do expect a multitude of changes in that Arsenal side for Mikel Arteta. First of all, I, for one, would wish to see Kepa Arrizabalaga in goal, would wish to see Piero Hincapié alongside Christian Mosquera, to see Ben White at right back, to see Maz Luis Kelly at left back, to see Christian Norgard in midfield, to see Kai Havertz, to see Ebeleche Eze. In an ideal world, to see a front 3 of Victor Gyökeres, Gabriel Martinelli, and Noni Madueke. That's the kind of lineup that I would love to see. Should there be a change that Kai Havertz cannot make it to the starting 11, then I would rather Maz Luis Kelly can play in midfield, and then Piero Hincapié and then we have Ricardo Carafiori play at left back. So whichever way, because Ricardo Carafiori is equally back in full training with the Gunners. So that would be my expectation of that Arsenal side. They play a Kairat Almaty side who have a youngster called Dastan, destined for Chelsea. Very, very brilliant youngster, 17 years of age. He's been spoken really, really highly of. I've not had the chance to watch him. You say, yes, that's a good 11. I would give midfield to Skelly. He's struggling at left back. Indeed, naturally, he's a midfielder. So sometimes when he struggles at left back, as unfortunate as it is, I do not blame him that much, especially in a season when he's not played that much as well. So, on the side of Kairati Almaty, I won't lie, I've not watched enough of them to give you opinion about who some of their best players are. But George Gabriel Jorginho is one of those in terms of who you should be worried about. Then Edmilson is one of those. So really, I don't know. It's a home game. Arsenal will be desperate to bounce back from their weekend nightmare. Win or lose, Arsenal still advance. So there's maybe not a motivation in that regard, but there's a monetary motivation that if they win this game, that means more money. If they finish at the top of the UEFA Champions League table, that's more money and certain advantages going down the competition, depending on how further they can move in terms of whether they find themselves at home first or at home last for the team that tops or the top two. Because the rules are shifted that if you finish within certain positions, especially like the top two, and you go as far as the semi-finals, you'll always have play away from home first before playing at home in the reverse fixture. So yeah, which gives you a bit of an advantage. Something that came to be a point of discussion last season when PSG played Arsenal at home first, and the second game was in Parc des Princes. Yet PSG had to go through the playoffs to get to the stage that they were at. So whatever advantage that offers you, you'll take it. So for Arsenal, one, it's bragging rights to be the first team in this new format of the UEFA Champions League to win 8 consecutive games of the group stages. 2, to finish the group stage level unbeaten in this new format. Last season, Liverpool attempted it, but they lost on match day 8 against PSV, who beat them by 3-2. Then the idea of wanting to bounce back, they do not want to lose their self-belief, their esteem, their confidence, and the idea of losing to Kairati Almaty would be an ugly one if Mikel Arteta was unable to guide his team to a victory, really. So that's the significance of this game. That's what is at stake for the Arsenal. For Kairati Almaty, other than the enjoyment of it, they have nothing they are really, really playing for, other than the money as well, because a win would mean 2 million euros plus in their pockets. But they are bottom. They only have 1 point. So it's not that if they win, they get a chance to advance to the next stage of the competition. So that's why I say they're literally, other than the money, they have nothing to play for. When they learned that they had been drawn among the teams that they had been drawn to play against was Arsenal, they went in sheer celebration because it's an opportunity for them to play against a club that they admire, from a distance for this Kazakhstan best side. So yeah, given how Arsenal have been very disciplined in the UEFA Champions League, only 2 goals conceded, 1 against Inter Milan, 1 against Bayern Munich, 20 goals scored. I'll go for Arsenal to win this game by 3-0 in my prediction or in my opinion. It has started raining out here in Kampala, Uganda. So if you do hear some background bit of noise, I blame it on the rain. Anyways, so we leave that game at that. That's Arsenal versus Kairati Almaty. But must I mention, before we step away from that game, is that William Saliba and Urian Timber were not seen in training yesterday for ahead of this fixture. And when Mikel Arteta was asked at the pre-match press conference, he said he will be that they will be out of the fixture. Christian Nogat, who I do not know whether Mikel Arteta has something on him. Surprisingly, it's like he had sort of read all the hula balu that I was trying to make about Christian Nogat, that he decided to bring him or to send him as a player to feature in that pre-match press conference, and he was being asked about his lack of game time. He spoke about the quality within the squad. He said he's happy with where he is at. The manager is happy with him, given the conversations that they do have. I do get frustrated sometimes when I watch Premier League games where you could use him to see out a game and Mikel Arteta does not deploy him. It's always been one of my frustrations, but in the UEFA Champions League, he's afforded him, some minutes. At one time, about that. Some stuff fell over. That's why I sort of flinched a bit. He's played him at centre back twice, and things like that. Of course, we know that's not his ideal position. He's a central midfielder. But for a player of his experience, having captained a Premier League team, I always think that he could use him more to step away from the over-reliance of Martin Zubimendi, who sometimes it's caused him to make mistakes, not because he's not good enough, not because he's tired, but again, I think he's been one of the least rotated players in that Arsenal squad, Martin Zubimendi. And the frustrating bit for me is it's not because Arsenal are without options to rotate him. It's just because Mikel Arteta seems to, I don't know whether it's a contract situation, because sometimes it's player contracts that then dictate the manager's team selection. They come at it in the sense of so for example, take the example. I'll give a very more recent example from what I was reading according to The Athletic. Arsenal agreed a loan deal of about close to 4 million euros for Ethan Nwaneri to join Olympique Marseille. But essentially, the guaranteed fees is about 1.5 million euros, with Olympique Marseille covering the players' wages. So the more games he plays for Marseille, then the lesser loan fee they'll play. The least games he plays for Marseille, then the more they'll pay in loan fees. So for Marseille to avoid that cost, then they will have to play him, really. So sometimes you have those kinds of situations within contracts where players are supposed, for as long as they're available and fit to play, they ought to be played. Why is someone asking who won AFCON? Well, it's a football question. I ought to answer it. Perhaps they didn't know. Perhaps they just wanted to hear my opinion. I do not know. But yeah, they asked the question and I was obliged to answer. Did you see the return of Douglas Luiz to Aston Villa? It's not one that I would have seen coming or I would have anticipated. But after his debut campaign with Juventus did not go according to plan, I kept looking around and saying, somebody should better get Douglas Luiz, because he's such a decent player, by the way. And of course, he got the loan move to Nottingham Forest, which you could say he has not lived to the expectations for why they really took him on. And that's why eventually teams like Chelsea and Aston Villa made inquiries to Juventus about the possibility of signing Douglas Luiz. And as of this morning, Aston Villa were in pole position to resign him back on loan until the end of the season with an option to buy. I do not think it's an obligation. I think it's an option to possibly buy. Of course, Juventus, whether they like it or not, they'll be taking a hit of a loss on the 27-year-old Brazilian international who Chelsea tried to target. And for me, the question was, Chelsea, what do you really want? Why do you want Douglas Luiz? Yes, with or without injuries. You have Moises Caicedo, you have Enzo Fernandez, you have Dario Esugo, you have Romeo Lavia, always injured, but he's available. You have Andre Santos, players that you can play in that deep lying role. You have Reche James, who is ordinarily a right back, but you can deploy in that, you can deploy in that sort of position. So really, I do not think there should be a desperation for Chelsea to try and sign a holding midfielder. I do not think it's one of the problems, in my opinion. So really, let's wait and see. Let's wait and see how things will be in that regard. But yeah, Aston Villa yesterday also did unveil the signing of Tammy Abraham. And now, so Tammy Abraham also not a transfer I saw coming, but um, after bouncing out on loan from Roma to AC Milan and then to Besiktas, Besiktas decided to sign him for about 11.5 million pounds, sorry, euros or pounds, there are about, and then sell him to Aston Villa for a profit of about 5.5 million euros. I said that's the easiest profit Besiktas are going to make, really, given how things transpired there. But yeah, I did not see that coming, that they would be signing Douglas Luiz. But the reason as to why they had to make the move is because of that injury to Boubacar Kamara in that Aston Villa midfield. And for a team that thinks they have a shot at winning the Premier League title, then why not? Why not strengthen your side? So yeah, those are some of the fixtures that I thought we should look at. But just a quick recap on what's to come. 11 p.m. East African time, kickoff time. Bilbao up against Sporting CP, Liverpool Qarabag, Barcelona versus Copenhagen, Monaco take on Juventus, Olympiacos play away to Ajax, Newcastle away to PSG, Dortmund at home to Inter, at home against Inter, Napoli at home against Chelsea, Tottenham away to Frankfurt as Bodo Glimt play away to Atletico de Madrid, Leverkusen up against Villarreal, Akairati Almaty away to Arsenal, Manchester City at home to Galatasaray, Pafos up against Slavia Praha, Club Brugge up against Olympique Marseille, Benfica take on Real Madrid, Union Saint-Gilloise up against Atlanta, PSV versus Bayern Munich. Many of these games we did tackle last night. That's why we've not had to repeat them. Tottenham against Frankfurt. Tottenham have done okay in the UEFA Champions League. Speaking of the UEFA Champions League, Anthony Gordon was being asked in their pre-match press conference ahead of the PSG game, and he was being asked about what's the difference between the UEFA Champions League and the Premier League. And he said the Premier League is more about, situational control, the physicality of it, deals after deals, set piece plays and things like that. Whereas in the UEFA Champions League, teams really, really like to play some football. They come out to play, not play with low blocks and things like that. And it couldn't be any more than true than the way he states it, because that's why we've always said, why are some teams struggling domestically and yet when they go to the UEFA Champions League, they seem to perform really, really well. So it's been a bit of a frustration for some of those teams, but it's because of how teams deploy themselves. The perfect example is look at the UEFA Champions League table leaders and look at how they are struggling in the Premier League. Really, they remain at the summit of it. So yeah, that's how things start. Thank you so much, Pedri, for being part of today morning's podcast. Thank you so much, Mweskwa, son of Soweto. Always a pleasure. Sino Bono, Treasure Matovu, and every single one of you. Fatuma Epilau. Thank you so much for having been a part of this morning's broadcast. Allow me to wrap it up here and wish you a wonderful rest of the day. It's close on to 10:30, and I need to get going to my other duties and responsibilities. So whichever thing we have left out, be sure we'll be here at 11 p.m. East African time tonight when that action goes down, to keep you up to date with the proceedings from some of those fixtures that you should be witnessing for yourselves on Wednesday. Otherwise, have a blessed day, a wonderful day. Take good care of yourselves, and I'll see you guys next time. Otherwise, bye-bye for now. Be blessed.